It happens every day. Thousands of container vessels sail across the oceans and enable global trade to make sure that consumer goods, food and medicine reach the consumers. However, the world currently burns around 300 million tons of fossil fuels per year, which makes shipping one of the world's most polluting industries. Amid the turbulent seas of climate change, environmental regulations, and the dire quest for sustainability, global shipping stands at a crossroad to lower its emissions. In this episode of Beyond the Box, we embark on a voyage to understand one of the most challenging, yet promising beacons on the horizon of shipping: green fuels.
This is Beyond the Box, integrated logistics from the inside out.
We're back. Welcome to episode 5 of Beyond the Box. My name is Gyrit Cecilie Ross.
And my name is Jonathan Rying Larsen. And can I just say, I'm so excited to be back. It feels like it's been ages since I last saw you. So good. First of all, can you tell me, how was your summer?
I traveled Portugal from the south to the north and basically ate my way through the country, literally, but I suppose also with my carbon footprint.
That sounds like a perfect holiday, minus the carbon footprint, obviously. And let me guess, you rented a car to get around.
I did. And I think I know where you're going with this. I'll have you know, I normally drive an electric car, but yes, the rental car was a traditional petrol-driven car, manual too, because I can drive a stick. But the fuel part, that's where you were going with this, yeah?
You know me too well. Yes, but it wouldn't have been so bad if it was green fuel. And that's exactly the topic of this episode, green fuels.
But specifically in the world of shipping, not road trips.
Exactly. And let me hit you and our listeners with a hard fact for comparison. If container vessels were to be electrified, the batteries alone would take up 80% of the capacity on a single vessel. This is just part of the reason as to why the development and scaling of green fuels is pivotal for the shipping industry.
Wait, if vessels were run like, say, a Tesla, they would only carry 20% of containers compared to a fuel-driven one?
Exactly.
Wow.
Imagine what a supermarket would look like.
I did not know that. I suppose it's not just good news then, but very good news that green fuels already are being produced and that several carriers have ordered green ships, many being delivered in the coming years.
Definitely.
Speaking of, Maersk is ready with the world's first green feeder vessel ever. And to all of us not speaking shipping fluently just yet, a feeder vessel is of the smaller kind, carrying up to 2,000-ish containers.
Sounds about right.
They, so to speak, feed the larger vessels in, for instance, areas where the massive triple E's can't go. And this one in particular will sail on biomethanol and start operations in the Baltic Sea this autumn.
And that is truly worth celebrating. So, not to be a spoilsport, but there are numerous obstacles ahead, and we will dive into them in this episode. But first, let's get an overview of the different kinds of green fuels. We spoke to Professor Lin Lu, who's the CEO of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization in Singapore. And this is her helping us all understand the fundamental basics.
So the classification of green fuels is actually not well defined today. The taxonomy is not there. I think green is something we generally refer to as being low carbon in nature, right? Although strictly speaking, there are different colors that are given to these future fuels. And in that context, green refers to fuels that are made with renewable electrons, with green hydrogen. So for example, like green ammonia and green methanol. There are blue fuels. So blue ammonia, for example, is made with natural gas. So it's fossil fuel based, but then you do the carbon capture. And so the carbon actually does not get into the atmosphere. It's just different processes. And these different colors refer to the process by which these fuels are made.
And just like that, Green Fuels 101. A big question remains though, how do supply and demand match up?
Yes, Professor Lin Lu can also enlighten us on that balance, or rather imbalance, should I say.
I don't think we have the supply nor the demand. I think frequently we hear the complaints about not having the supply, not having the supply, not having the supply. But I would say if you talk to the suppliers, they would say that we don't have the demand either, right? And so this is the perpetual chicken and egg challenge that we're dealing with, especially in the maritime sector. We don't have the ships that can burn ammonia, neither do we have the green ammonia. I think methanol is further along, as demonstrated by the Maersk container feeder vessel, right? And that's one step along the ways. I think it's both to increase demand, but also to increase supply. And currently, the world bunkers about 300 million tons of fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are significantly more energy dense compared to methanol or ammonia. So methanol or ammonia, depending on whether you're looking at it gravimetrically or volumetrically, is between 2 and 3 times less energy dense than fossil fuels. And so you're going to need significantly more if you're going to replace the entire volume of marine fuel. These numbers are humongous, right? I mean, there's no question that the demand has to grow. Ammonia global production today is about 200 million tons. That's going to be at least 600 million tons by 2050. And so it's going to grow tremendously, not only to satisfy existing applications, but with new application and new end use like marine fuels, like power generation. These numbers are going to be humongous.
Okay, listening to Professor Lin Lu of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization in Singapore, I'd say this is incredible numbers, right?
Incredible, yes, but also mind-boggling. I'm especially dumbfounded by the fact that green fuels, be it ammonia or methanol, are between 2 and 3 times less energy dense than fossil fuels. This creates a situation of not just 1, actually producing these types of fuels, but 2, having to produce so much more. I mean, the last few numbers were just for ammonia. Honestly, the numbers for renewable methanol are just as mind-blowing. I'm almost at a point of just tapping out. Like, pardon my language, but how the hell are we going to succeed?
That's a good point, and sorry for laughing, but it is a big task ahead, and this is exactly why we call it a journey.
Yeah, this surely isn't fixed overnight.
No, you're right, and you mentioned it yourself before. That was just the numbers for ammonia.
Yeah, so let's do a tiny bit more of hand-holding.
First off, green methanol can mean either biomethanol or e-methanol.
Biomethanol is produced through the gasification of organic materials or biomass.
And e-methanol is produced by combining green hydrogen and captured carbon dioxide.
The Methanol Institute is tracking e-methanol and biomethanol projects around the world. It calculates that these will produce more than 8 million metric tons a year by 2027. At the same time, some estimates say we will need as much as 540 million metric tons by 2050 to fully replace fossil fuels in shipping. 8 million today versus 540 million in the space of a few decades. Understand why I'm considering just tapping out completely?
Definitely. Me as well. There is a lot of work to be done here. But before you tap out, there are, thankfully, some companies helping to accelerate the global production capacity for green methanol. We spoke to one of those companies, Sungas Renewables in the US. They are a leading company in providing technology and equipment systems for the large-scale production of renewable fuels. When asked about the chicken and egg situation, and if it's even doable and more importantly scalable, this is what David Lamont, Senior Vice President of Corporate Development, said.
Sungas's view of the current supply of green fuels is positive. We've been surprised at how few obstacles we've seen, not just for marine methanol, but in any areas where it's going to be hard to electrify as the pathway to net zero. Renewable green fuels are going to have a large role to play. I really think green methanol is the next big chapter in renewable energy. The will is there with the work Maersk and others are doing to lead the creation of demand. The capital is forming rapidly to build massive amounts of global infrastructure that's going to be required to deploy these fuels. The technology to produce green methanol at scale is ready today. And I think we're all showing as we work together how to demonstrate the right kind of collaboration that's needed to catalyze a huge amount of progress in a really short amount of time. It's a good story. To accelerate its scale, I think the marine industry should do more of what it's already doing. It's unifying around green shipping corridors, building supply chains, building bunkering facilities, investing in technology pathways of all kinds to access these renewable fuels. That's going to be really important. We're not picking winners and losers. We're building a whole new industry here, and there's going to be room for new innovations. There's certainly room for lots of supply, and continuing on those demand signals and giving clear market signals to allow for investment in new projects and new technologies is going to be really important to accelerating the growth of supply of these fuels.
Sungas Renewables clearly sees potential in this space.
But when it comes to deciding to ramp up supply and build a production facility, well, let's just say it's a long and winding road.
It sure is, Paul McCartney. But remember Professor Lin Lu from before? She'll agree with you.
At the end of the day, no question, you need to build at historical rates year over year for the next 30 years.
But though all that is true, David Lamont, as a producer of green fuels, still sounds very optimistic. So let's broaden the scope and hear if an off-taker is as positive about the transition to net zero. Emma Masari is responsible for buying fuel as the head of energy markets at Maersk. Here's her perspective.
So it's been an enormous development since 2018. Basically, we were a first mover. We put a bet on green methanol. We ordered our first green methanol vessel, and there was no market for green methanol at the time. And what we see today is a large share of followership. So we have many now of our competitors ordered green methanol vessels, and the order book is standing at more than 100 methanol vessels. So there's been quite an exponential growth here, which is fantastic. So we see a very strong demand signal being sent to the market. And when we then talk to our product developers, etc., we also see that there's a very, very strong supply response as well. So we have now a pipeline of near to 100 leads that we are following up on, and they are at different stages of development. They're projects across the globe, and we can see that there are more and more maturity in the projects that we're looking at.
So according to Emma Masari, there's both a strong demand signal and an equally strong supply response, which is great news. But is the transition happening fast enough, and what challenges are we facing?
Here's both David Lamont and Emma Masari again.
Yeah, some of the key obstacles that we saw were really around, is the demand going to be there? And Maersk, of course, has done its part to provide a strong signal and a real commitment to taking that concern away. And that has really sort of unlocked all of the potential of the opportunity to produce these renewable fuels in the sustainably managed forests in the U.S. Southeast. We have been working initially with the Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, the organization that Maersk helped create, to sort of understand how the marine industry could unpack the decarbonization problem. What are the pathways? What are the fuels that could be used? And so our work with them, showing how our fuel pathway fits into the overall decarbonization equation, really helped us understand that there's a real opportunity here, a large-scale opportunity, a particularly sweet spot for us to deploy our technology. And so that led then to, about 2 years ago, really starting out heavily working on the development of what is now the Beaver Lake facility.
So the main obstacle really is to accelerate the pace and making sure that we have sufficient green fuel supply to the market. There is a lot of demand coming with all these new vessel orders, so it's really now for product developers and investors to sort of drive this transition together with us. Currently, the green methanol market production is very small, and we have now ordered 25 methanol vessels. The first one is already sailing, and the big ocean-going vessels will start to be delivered early next year in 2024. And by 2030, our ambition is to have 25% of our fuel mix in ocean running on green fuels. And for this, we need about 5 million tons of green methanol. And we can see on the customer side that there is very strong demand, and we need to make sure that we can deliver to our customer demands so that they can meet their science-based targets. And therefore, it's really important that we can drive this transition at speed with our partners. With recent regulatory developments, it's clear that there's no turning back. There needs to be decarbonization for shipping, and that means that this acceleration of green fuels to market needs to be successful for the industry to be able to meet decarbonization targets and to deliver credible solutions to our customers.
So we've established that there is a need for speed in terms of development and scale, but challenges aren't limited to production. Professor Lin Lu of the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization in Singapore unfolds the topic even further.
I think there's a lot of attention paid on sort of upstream production side of things. But I think not enough attention is being paid at the interface, right? How do you get that molecule from production to the end customer or to the end user? That's tremendously important, especially when we talk about marine fuel, ammonia, e-methanol, and biomethanol, although I think scale are challenges there. Is a new use case. Therefore, new supply chains need to be established. New infrastructure needs to be established, especially at the port side, storage terminals, bunkering barges, et cetera, pipelines. So we can't forget that middle piece, right? And then finally, last but not least, it's sort of the guidelines, right? The safety guidelines need to be there so that you can ensure these molecules flow safely and responsibly from sort of the production side of things to the end user.
All right, so now we've heard about the transition to green fuels from both a provider and an off-taker and a professor.
But there is another side to this story, or should I say, dilemma, that needs to be presented.
Yeah, because though you could think otherwise, the demand for traditional fossil fuels won't slow down anytime soon.
To understand why, we spoke to Monjasa, a global top 10 bunker shipping company. Last year, it supplied 6.4 million tons of fuel to the marine industry, and as a fuel trader and provider, Monjasa has a unique position in the value chain. It's in close dialogue with actors both up and downstream, and here's Jesper Nielsen, Group Responsibility Director.
Of course, liner companies have a clear advantage, right? They will lead the transition. They know their schedules, they can plan around with more sophisticated fuel mixes, but for most of the industry, I see a triad of key issues. There's a wide cost gap that has not been dealt with, and it's causing a widespread apathy across the industry right now. And two, there are no clear consequences of non-compliance. And then thirdly, there's just no easy long-term solution in sight for any ship owner yet. And when you combine these three factors, we're just in for a couple of tough years. Our partners are looking into an immature market with incomplete regulation and just framework conditions, making it very difficult to trust a multi-billion-dollar spreadsheet and push the let's go button. Right? Most sane investors would lean back and say, no, absolutely, we should wait 5-10 years and then assess how the landscape finally worked out. However, if everyone just did that, then our collective chances of meeting IMO targets, they can be multiplied by exactly 0. So ultimately, it's back to the carrot and the stick. And there's certainly no carrot in sight. So without a clear stick component, we're just not going to see a broad transition.
Carrots and sticks, chicken and eggs. Are we making an omelette here?
We definitely have a lot on our plate.
Wow, a dad joke.
Yeah, sorry about that. But, food bans aside, I think this perspective from Jesper Nielsen is important because it really underlines the challenges ahead.
So true. I think a crucial point to be made here is that no company can do this alone. No country can succeed by themselves. This, if it's going to work, must be a joint venture, which is why the revised strategy from IMO's Marine Environment Protection Committee is worth mentioning. And on that note, let's hear from the head of energy markets at Maersk one last time.
Here is Emma Masari again.
There is a lot of potential, also with the different regulations that are being announced and are being implemented, which provides a lot of support for these projects, both on the production side, but also on the consumption of green fuels. So there's a lot of momentum in this space now.
Exactly. And for the regulatory part, I suggest listening to our last episode. I don't know about you, Gert, but my head is about to explode with information on green fuels and the dilemmas involved in the energy transition. For the sake of my mental health, can you please take us all through what we learned today?
All right, sure, and totally fair. It is a complex subject with a lot of nuances, or should I say ingredients? That was a callback to your dad joke earlier.
Thanks for that.
Anyway, here goes. There are several versions of green fuels, and we will long-term most likely see a mix in usage. We need to ramp up production of green fuels because they are less energy dense or less efficient than traditional fossil fuels. The demand is there, but production lags, and lawmakers need to agree on a regulatory framework for green fuels. Without a level playing field or consequences if you don't comply, the transition towards a more sustainable future in shipping will be very slow, too slow, almost impossible.
Thank you so much, Gyrid. That was a nice little rundown of the episode. You are a lifesaver.
Do I get a Michelin star?
Yes, definitely. You get 2. That also gave me the brain capacity to remember to thank all the people involved in this episode and to the team behind the scenes, Morten Butler and Ellen Hoffman. Remember to subscribe to Beyond the Box on your favorite podcast platform. There are 5 episodes so far, and you can find them on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast. Until then...